Let me tell you my favourite Jewish joke. There are these two Jews in front of a firing squad and they're offered blindfolds. Whereupon one of the Jews starts swearing, effing and blinding, telling them to shove their blindfold where the sun doesn't shine. And the other Jewish guy turns to him and says, "Shh, you don't want to make trouble." Now, I always thought that British Jews were a bit like that. Don't make trouble. Don't create a fuss. Get on with life, work, contribute, be grateful. And for the last few hundred years, we've certainly had a lot to be grateful for, living freely and safely, lucky to have found ourselves entwined and welcomed within the social fabric of Britain, as Britain has become entwined within the social fabric of who we are. Every week in synagogue, we say a prayer for the leaders of our country, for its lawmakers and welfare, knowing our fates are the same. And for the most part, we were safe. Until last Thursday, until Yom Kippur. How many of us knew then, as we were reciting the community prayers, that our lawmakers had already let us down, that there would be two men who were no longer sealed in the book of life. Which is why this week you saw some British Jews become the other guy in the joke. You saw it when the Deputy Prime Minister was heckled at the vigil on Friday, because we find ourselves in a firing line regardless, and politeness hasn't protected us. So let me be impolite. Muslims are racist towards Jews. Yes, it's not all Muslims, and I've been lucky to meet many who fight this racism at great personal cost. But unfortunately, there are many more who tolerate this hatred, many who indulge in it, and as we saw this week, there are those who act upon it. Now, you can label those people jihadists or extremists or it's radical Islam or Islamists, but let us not pretend that they are not Muslims, that they don't follow the ideology of Islam, an ideology that is just a little bit obsessed with Jews. We're mentioned over 80 times in the Quran. There's even a hadith about killing Jews and going to heaven. And surprise, surprise, this week a British Muslim man killed some British Jewish men thinking he'd go to heaven. Cue response of accusations of Islamophobia, of racism. Josh, you're actually the real racist for accusing them of being racist. Look, you don't get British Jews murdering British Muslims. You don't get British Jews trying to stab Muslims in halal supermarkets. You don't get British Jews driving a convoy of cars through Bradford shouting through loudspeakers that we're going to rape Muslim wives and daughters. At most, and I'm letting you behind the veil here into the secret Jewish world order, occasionally we'll tentatively look around the room and then lean in and whisper to one another, you know, a lot of Muslims really seem to hate Jews. The thing is, Islam has nothing at all to do with our founding mythology. Islam and Muslims are mentioned in the Torah a ground total of 0 times. Aha, I hear you cry, but what about Gaza? Well, what about Gaza? This war, not genocide, but war, that the Jewish state didn't start, that it has no choice but to fight after being invaded and its citizens raped and slaughtered and dragged away to be tortured in tunnels. What about Gaza, that Jews thousands of miles away in a different country are to be somehow held responsible for? Yes, there is obviously innocent death in Gaza, and like all innocent death, especially children, it is a tragedy. But we've had 2 years of lies. Was the BBC dealing in facts when it broadcast that 14,000 babies would die because of Israel in the following 48 hours? Did the BBC challenge that at the time? Did it ever apologise apart from a tiny correction? No. It just invited the same liar back on to say more lies unchallenged. 2 years of lies and omissions to present the world's only Jewish state as uniquely evil, to dehumanise all Jews. Did the Daily Mirror apologise for its front page headline, "Stop starving Gaza's kids," with a photo of an emaciated child, who was later revealed instead suffered from a genetic disorder? And so the blood libel continues after millennia, no one ever asking, if there is really a genocide and a famine, well, why do they have to use fake photos and fake videos? Why has the population grown? And so the incitement spreads to the streets, where even yesterday Islamists chanted along with their far-left, useful, bigoted idiots that the murder of Jews was justified, that the murder of Jews should be globalized. This potent fusion of racist incitement meeting a racist ideology is what leads to murder. And meanwhile, the politicians and the institutions that are meant to protect us cower in fear. Many mosques and imams preached hate and called for the murder of Jews after October 7th. And with all that video evidence, how many mosques were subsequently closed, or charges brought by the police and the CPS, or even loss of charity status? None. But But just as important, why did those men expressing their hate feel so emboldened and safe in those spaces to spread it? How many agreed with them? How many moderate Muslims in the room spoke out challenging that hate? Don't divide us. It doesn't work when a man tries to murder as many Jews as he can, whilst crowds on the street chant daily for more of the same. Don't make any trouble. That also doesn't work, at least for this Jew. No blindfold for me. No more being shamed into shutting up and taking it. The time for politeness and fear has passed. A free speech nation only matters if you use it. I'm joined now by investigative journalist David Collier and journalist and commentator Khadija Khan. Hello, welcome to the show, guys. Woo! That was pretty heavy. That was a heavy start to the show there. David, I am making my comments as one Jew. That's how I feel. I don't know how much of it might have resonated with you as another Jew.
Almost all of it, actually. I mean, I've been dealing with the lies that the media have been telling, the stories, and this is part of it, because whilst we do have the hate amongst these Islamists, and you're talking about the imams spreading the hate from the mosques, it's really the responsibility of the politicians and the media not to turn around and look for togetherness, but to actually confront it, to point it out, to tell the truth. Because if the media had been telling the truth over the last 2 years, it would have toned down and squashed some of the hate that we're seeing on the streets. But they're not. And I cannot stress, people, that they say that the media is lying. I do think that people don't get how bad it actually is. They're lying. It's constant, this push that they are putting onto us every single day.
Yeah, I mean, there are two elements I guess I talked about in the monologue, one being the media and our institutions. Khadija, did any of what I said resonate with your experiences?
First of all, sincere condolences. It was heartwarming monologue, what I heard, and it touched my heart. I think we need to face the reality, face the truth, and the truth is that this person who came here as a young person in the UK, he was brainwashed religiously on British soil. That is a fact. We cannot deny the fact, and there is something wrong with us as a society because we are letting these extremists take root in our society with impunity, as you just mentioned, that there have been incidents when mosques and certain seminaries, they were propagating anti-Semitic propaganda with impunity, and nothing was done. Nothing was done. That is the tragedy. And now you just mentioned about media. I would say there have been reports in the media, in mainstream media. There have been secular and humanist organizations who have been reporting on these incidents, but nothing was done. The concerned authorities, it was like all falling on deaf ears. That is the problem we are facing as a society. So in my opinion, that, as you said, that we need to have an honest and frank and open discussion on this issue, that yes, there are certain segments within Muslim communities which are radicalized by this ideology. And I would not say that it's only an Islamist ideology. There are certain Islamic teachings, certain Islamic readings that encourage or embolden these kind of sentiment among people. So why not discuss those things and just rebut and denounce those things publicly in an open discussion so that people don't fall for them? We have to also think about those people who are vulnerable. They are Muslim young boys and girls who are just going to these mosques, taking these lectures, taking these lessons, and they are falling for these propaganda. In my opinion, hate, bigotry, prejudice, wherever it rears its ugly head, we need to call it out. Whether it is coming from religion, we should not be tolerating intolerance.
Absolutely, and it's an interesting point you make, because all religions contain problematic passages. You know, in the New Testament, in the Torah, there's stuff you can find anywhere which can be used to hate, of course. But as you're saying, Khadija, what we are unfortunately seeing is lack of support for those people who are challenging it, right?
I think part of it as well is what happens when they do. I mean, you're mentioning now, if I was to go on my Facebook or on Twitter and I was to post something that was controversial, extreme, there would be immediate pushback from within my own community. I do a lot of research into like the extremist like Muslims in this country, and you go on their Facebook posts, you go into their pages, when they post something, even if it's support for terrorism, support for bloodshed, there's only likes, only love hearts, not a single angry face, not a single challenge. And that's a really scary situation to be in.
Well, we just saw obviously the attack this week, and then it's revealed that the murderer's father comes out and does his kind of like, this is a shock, this is a tragedy, and then, of course, tell me what you were talking about earlier.
This is part of it. I mean, shortly after the attack, one of the things I do is I go and I start looking for, the family, start seeing what's going on. I found the father's Facebook. And as the father is making a statement to say we're absolutely shocked and horrified, you go into his Facebook stream and you see that there's been support for the atrocities of October the 7th. There's support for rockets and missiles falling on Israeli houses. And it reminded me because it's a pattern. I remember with the murder of the MP, David Amos in Southend, when I did the same thing, you find the father standing there talking about how he's shocked. But you go into the father's Facebook posts and you see this is what's going on in the household. You can see the extremism there. And these people, they're coming in, and we're talking about now, these people mostly were born here, not all of them. But if not, then their parents were born abroad. And they're coming in from places like Libya, the Manchester bomber in Libya, and you realise that they were fighting in Libya. Or this guy from Syria was sectarian. Just because he happened to be against Assad doesn't make him a friend of democracy and we're bringing them in. We're not checking enough. We've got hundreds of thousands of these people coming in every year, and there is almost no due diligence done on it whatsoever. They're being left in these houses. The fathers are extreme, and they're pushing this extremism onto the children. And we're not the problem, and this is what our society's not pushing back against it. We're not taking those children and saying, actually, you're British, you're here. This is what we believe over here. And we're not doing that. And I think it's an awful mistake.
Yeah, I mean, this cultural point is, I think this goes back to what you were saying, was that, someone was essentially raised in this country, he was very young when he came here. This is a learned culture, right?
We have seen these discussions in mainstream media that these pro-Palestine marches, they are, infiltrated by certain anti-Semitic, elements, and then there has been denial about this thing, and then we see that right after this tragic incident, 2 Jewish people, they were killed in cold blood. And after a few hours, we saw a chaos in the city. I mean, they didn't give them 24-hour period, in my opinion, just to mourn their loved ones in peace. Or it's a tragedy for the whole community. So I have always said that there have been elements here in this society on British soil which are extremist. And of course, people who are coming with these kind of radical views, they are doubling down, this kind of threat to our democracy, to our society, to our culture. But we need to understand this thing, that there is a denial about these anti-Semitic elements in the pro-Palestine marches. We are not willing to accept that there is a problem and we need to address that. And it's in my opinion, it's ridiculous to even suggest that we have been sleepwalking into this nightmare. Literally, it was a suicidal adventure, in my opinion, to let these extremist views take root in British society. And it is a tragedy that a country that has been viewed traditionally as the bastion of free speech, tolerance, and a heaven, a secure heaven for religious minority, this has become a breeding ground for these extremist views. And this all being done in the name of multiculturalism, because the suggestion that has been pushed into political and social discourse is that all cultures, they are all equal, they are all respectable, all religious beliefs are respectable. You cannot just criticize any religion, and specifically Islam. The anti-Semitic sentiment have been euphemized, by pro-Palestine activism in the West, in my opinion, because people, they say whatever they want to say and they get away with it because they are activists, because they are speaking for Palestinian people. In Palestine, Palestinian people, they are raising their voice against Hamas, but you will not see any of these pro-Palestine protesters in the West condemning Hamas terrorists. They would be removing every single individual from the protest who is even carrying a placard condemning Hamas.
Well, it's not just the protest, whatever you're seeing on the BBC. You're not going to see any. I've seen lots of footage of Hamas murdering its own citizens. You're never seeing that kind of stuff out on the BBC. And, you know, the other part of what I was talking about, David, was, you know, how much the incitement that we've seen and the lies that have come through, and many of them that you personally have exposed. To what level do you think that has added to what happened on Thursday?
Well, firstly, I think that the BBC is the biggest spreader of anti-Semitism in the United Kingdom today, bar none, because the legitimacy that the BBC has, it carries the responsibility of telling the truth. So when the BBC is pushing lies or not exposing what's taking place, we're talking about these marches. Almost all of the mainstream media sources have referred to...
Obviously, the BBC deny that. I just have to say that.
Well, OK.
Well, of course they can, yeah.
Deny as much as they like, you know, for fine. But all of these mainstream... They've been referring to these marches as peace marches. You know, we have these people, the ones who are marching through the streets, calling for the destruction of the Middle East's only democracy, turning around and
also calling for the destruction of globalised the
globalised intifada, which is effectively to turn around and say, I need to become a target. I need to, as we saw in Manchester a few days ago. That's what globalised intifada looks like. And yet our media are reporting them as peace marches, and they've been taking over our streets throughout the cities for the last 2 years. I've been here now. I've never seen anything like it, where the same marches are taking place week in, week out, every week for 2 years, without the government turning around and saying, you know what, enough.
Oh, we have a debate coming up on that. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining us for the show. David Kalia, Khadija Khan. I just want to say, there's a statement from the BBC that it turns out remarks were actually based on an IPC report that warned that 14,100 severe cases of acute malnutrition were estimated between April 25 and March 26 for children aged between 6 months and 5 years.